Hey friends, welcome to this episode of Coaching Conversations. Can we just take a minute to appreciate this light? My forewing is coming out to play and I'm so into this light. So if you're listening on the podcast, go to Instagram or YouTube and just appreciate this beautiful light. Just kidding, that's too much work. Stay where you're at. Anyways, we're gonna dive into a new series that I'm starting called Enneagram Makes Everything Better. And we're going to start talking about how the Enneagram can actually make different parts of your life better. Because as you know, here at the Enneagram Workshop, I'm kind of obsessed with making sure that we take the wisdom of the Enneagram and put it to work for us so our lives are better. So that's what we're going to do. Today we're going to talk about how the Enneagram makes decision making better. And decision making can be stressful. So we're going to talk about how our types influence our decision making and things that we can be aware of to help us go through all these decisions we have to make with a little bit more ease and health. We all have a bias. Our Enneagram type colors the way we see the world. It's almost like once you know that, you can start course correcting so you stay straight, so you stay in wisdom, so you stay in the right course. Kind of like at the grocery store when you have that cart that's like veering off. If you're not aware enough, if you're not self-aware enough to realize that your life is constantly veering off into a certain direction, you're gonna put no effort into correcting it. And as we've all, I'm sure, experienced, a shopping cart going off on the rails just creates a lot of mess, a lot of chaos, a lot of stubbed toes. I don't know. I'm imagining an apple pyramid tumbling down and like making a big mess. So we don't want that in our lives. We want to know where our lives veer off so that we can correct them and right them. So let's dive into some of the nitty-gritty of how each type makes decisions and just some considerations for you. So for type 1s, obviously, you are going to be probably very concerned with making the right decision, making sure that it is the correct thing to do. And because 1s tend to think of things as binary, yes or no, right or wrong, black or white, it can feel like in decision making, there is only one right answer and everything else is wrong. But as a consideration for you, I would submit that oftentimes there are many equally right and good ways to do things. And resting in faith and beginning to release some of your type's compulsions will allow you to embrace the fact that if this decision feels right to you in your gut, and again, let's just remember that type 1s are in the gut triad, and feeling things in your gut is a form of intelligence. It is a legitimate form of intelligence. I think it's probably the one that we value the least in our culture. I think we value thinking, that intelligence center as tops. I think feeling is probably second. We kind of respect feelings. Barely anyone respects when you say, I just know it in my gut that this is the right thing to do. But it is just as valid of a center of intelligence as every other one. So honor that. If it feels right to you, if it aligns with your moral compass, go with it. And any other time that you linger making that decision is simply giving into fear. And let's start to release that fear. All right, type 2s. Your decision-making process is going to focus more on others. As a dependent type, as a type that wants to be needed and loved and is very relationally connected, your considerations as you're making decisions is going to be, well, what's best for everyone else? What's best for others in my life? And there's nothing wrong with considering the ramifications of a decision as far as how it will be affecting others. It's very kind of you. However, just like that shopping cart that veers off, if it goes unchecked, if it goes without a balancing consideration of what's right and best for you, then it goes into the danger zone. So yes, your instinct is to consider how is this going to be best for others, but I also want you to make sure that you're considering which decision is going to be best for you. And you matter, and you can be a priority, and your needs are just as important as everyone else's. So make sure that that's a balancing consideration, and make sure that it's given enough weight as you make your decisions. Type 3s. Typically, your decision making is considering what is going to be the most efficient, the most practical, and help me get the most done in the least amount of time. And so none of those are wrong considerations. However, you need to balance that with, are you trying to do too much? Do all of these things need to happen? Does it need to be to that level of excellence and success? And not that it's not okay to strive for it, but when it becomes a compulsion, when it has to be at this level, when it has to be a decision that brings me this kind of productivity and this kind of efficiency, that's when the compulsion becomes bondage rather than serving. So balancing that out with just taking a step back, taking stock of your own physical capacity and capabilities, and being willing to honor your self-care above the efficiency and productivity is going to be a great balancing energy for you as you make decisions. All right, type 4s. You are going to be veering towards what decision feels right. What decision just is feeling like the right decision. And as we spoke about, the feeling center is a valid center of intelligence. So it is going to give you some great feedback. However, I would balance that out with engaging thinking. So let's think practically about this decision. Making a pros and cons list is not the end of the world. It could be really beneficial to balance out the feelings with some sort of like concrete facts that could help you give a little bit of balance to that. And then, going ahead and taking action once the decision has been made. Because one day the decision can feel like it should go this way, and another day it can feel like it should go that way. And the more that it's just exhausting to be constantly up and down and all over the place with this decision. And so definitely having those facts, having some sort of anchor in your decision-making process that engages your thinking and then also engages your doing center to take action, make the decision final. Sometimes there almost is no right or wrong decision. It's mostly when you don't make a decision that gets you in more trouble. So go ahead and jump in. Get some facts, engage thinking, engage doing, because feeling will always be there and should be honored, just balanced with some of these other centers. All right, type 5s. You're typically going to give more consideration to the decisions that have the most data evidence behind it. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. In order to balance it, however, I would encourage you to seek out counsel from others. And I know you don't need it because others are not data, that's just their opinion. But others, what they can bring to you is an understanding of the emotional cost, an understanding of how the decision might affect others, bringing in a little bit of that type 2, they're always considering how it will affect others, maybe a little too much. Type 5s could probably consider how their decision will affect others a little bit more, giving a little more weight to that, because we do live in a world with people and we love people and want to connect with them and serve them. And so at least bringing their emotional needs into the equation is helpful for type 5s. And oftentimes it's going to be someone outside of the type 5 that will bring that perspective. So seek counsel. Even if you have all the data, even if you have all the evidence and you're pretty set on what you're going to do, that's totally fine. It just might be a nice balance to seek the counsel of someone else who is more in touch with feelings, emotions, and how it will affect people around you. All right, type 6s. Type 6s will tend to make the decision that is the least risky, or that there is tradition to support it. And it feels less risky to rely on what other people have investigated and decided is best. And just as a balance to that, I would encourage 6s to connect a little bit more into their own selves, with their own thoughts and with their own belief systems, and even be able to challenge some of the tradition, challenge some of the experts, and settle on what the right decision is for them, and have faith that that they can come to that decision, and that they can balance out. You don't have to stop listening to the experts. You don't have to stop listening to all of the tradition that your community has brought to you. Simply be willing to balance it with some inner seeking and some inner voice listening. Type 7s. So 7s may not want to face hard decisions and almost bypass or skip over or not engage in actually making a hard decision because it is uncomfortable at times. And so the balancing of that is to slow down, settle in, face the decision head on, and decide to make one. It's going to be so helpful for you. Type 8s. Type 8s will choose the decision that keeps the most control in their hands, will allow them to maintain control of the situation the most. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, because type 8s are so capable of controlling and being that force, that leader, that the ability to organize and manage. However, I would just challenge 8s to consider, is this a space, is this a time where I can practice releasing a little bit of control? Is this a time or place where I can allow someone else to take a piece and run with it, where I can delegate, where I can trust that things can go right? And again, simply as a balance, not to forsake your instincts altogether because you're an 8 and you're awesome. It's simply a balance. It's a consideration to wonder if this would be a time to pull back a little bit and press into trust, press into faith in the decision-making process. For type 9s, their considerations in making decisions will probably be, I would rather not have to make this decision, either ignoring the decision that needs to be made and just living with it, living with the ramifications of no decision being made, because 9s can endure a lot. They'll just endure whatever it is that comes of it, rather than facing the decision, making the decision, and dealing with whatever the fallout of that decision is. Because, every decision is an opportunity or a potential for peace to be disrupted, for things to go wrong, for someone to be upset with the decision that was made. But as a balancing energy for 9s, press into faith that you will be okay, even if the decision you make comes with it a little bit of upheaval, comes with it a little bit of chaos. So that is how the Enneagram makes decision-making better. It helps us to balance, it helps us to consider, it helps us to bring in another perspective that will challenge what our instincts have always led us to do, and hopefully allow us to have a greater freedom as we make our decisions. So thanks for listening, and I will see you next week for our next edition of the Enneagram Makes Everything Better. I can't wait to share everything that I have with you guys. It's going to be so fun.